India, I mean, it's very popularly considered as a low cost market, right? And but you made an interesting mention on the need to focus on right cost instead of low cost. So can you explain a bit more on the right cost approach, if you can?
Yeah. See, our neighboring countries would look at low cost approach because they would try to win with money, lower cost. But the difference between right cost and low cost is a very small line, right? Very small difference. We bring value to the table on a longer perspective, long-term perspective, medium-term perspective. We bring value to the table so that the product can be scalable. You go and get a low-cost product done. That means it's done for that particular engine or a particular vehicle or a particular model. When you say right cost components, we think about all possible areas of bringing value. So the right cost components live longer. The low cost component lives shorter. That's the first one. And again, the right cost component is made with the existing proven manufacturing methodologies. We are not looking for new methodologies. I'm not against technology, but we should get the best out of what is available with us. If the existing machines and existing processes can do a design, why not I use that? Then import some machines or bring some new machines and increase my capex and try to do something here. And more so, not only capex, but also the time required to do that, right? And the relevant technology for the market will also drive the right cost. We cannot expect that we bring in an imported part and then trying to localize that as it is here without looking at the relevant technology, whether it's suited for the country. We would be increasing the cost as we are just localizing the component. So the right cost as a triangle has been put by the relevant technology, the right manufacturing setup what we have, and that's bringing in right cost component, which means we are bringing more value to the table. And if I have to say, the second part of the right cost is functional integration. Like we always look at in our group, when a customer is coming in, we will see what other functions I can provide him additional so that I can remove one less component in his system. So the functional integration is set to bring in the right cost, because 5 plus 5, we do integration, it becomes 7.5 or 8, right? So that we always try to bring in. For example, I can give in one of the BS6 applications, we have given the near equivalent BS4 product with a little tweak in the parameters, but yet to meet the BS6 with a low oil consumption and lower blow by, and light weighting also brought into that. So the OEM does give a free hand to us to design and develop the right cost product. And this is not a low cost product because it leaves BS6. And I am sure with a little bit of optimization, we can meet CAFE 2 with the same product. So that's the right cost perspective. And maybe the customers will feel like he's paying a 5%, 2% higher than the low cost. The difference between low cost and right cost we are talking about is under 5%. We are not looking at something bigger than that. So that's my take on it.
Wonderful. I mean, thank you for another very, very interesting takeaway, which is the right cost approach. Brilliant. Yeah, you hinted on the scarcity of competent resources in our industry. How do you see skill and competence development happening in our industry? If you can share your thoughts on that, Meenakshi.
Yeah, I would take some examples from my old job as well as the current job. See, the skill development is done on a particular area or function. The competency development is a little holistic approach, and an engineer can do a particular set of work for us by utilizing the simulation techniques, his fundamentals very importantly, then simulation techniques, then using the knowledge in component level, which is materials and coating and so on, and then getting into system level, which typically come from this engineer or from an experienced engineer to part that knowledge to him. Over a period of time, he is expected to be competent from a concept to launch, right? We can clearly put this competency in 3 different areas. Concept to launch is one area people are expecting. Raw material to delivery is second place, which they're expecting, which is on the plant side, and order to cash, which is on the sales and marketing side. So we focus on concept to launch. So the competent resources can bring in a lot of value proposition. The company can move up in the value chain. That means I am not a print to part manufacturer. We would be defining the requirements. So our group has been doing this for more than 30 years now. We define the requirements, we design a product, we go propose to the customers, they approve this to us, then we come back and do manufacturing. So there we bring in a lot of innovation ideas in view of reducing the cost or reducing the weight or improving the performance. So the competent resources can bring in a holistic approach. And we can go ahead and refer to the SAE Skill India program, which they launched before 4 years for the young engineers who are coming out of college. So the software companies, what they do, they take people, they give them a 1-year training, which half of the people will go in skill development, half of the people will go in competency development. We can differentiate this in a way. The software testing guy will go into an area where he will do more of testing and get on-the-job training. But the guy who is going to be coding and programming is really, understanding the basics of insurance or basics of taxation. He makes his own programming. So it's expected that he should be a subject matter expert, also put together the product concept. And the skilled guys are expected to do the job, similar job, not the same job, similar job again with more efficiency, right? I wouldn't call it as productivity here. The productivity equivalent in manufacturing is our efficiency here. So the engineering efficiency has to be right. That means first time right product design. First time right, I design a product, it goes into validation, it passes without any customer issues. So that means I'm efficient, you can call that as. And the industry engineers must upgrade themselves on a period of time in a given competency areas. They become subject matter experts. So there are many ways to do that. If a young guy comes up and do a unit conversion as a very fundamental basic and gets into a math-based simulation, then he is learning the materials, and then he is giving solutions. When he interacts with the experienced engineers and manufacturing folks, come back with the full-fledged solutions. But at the same time, the industry experienced engineers can be exposed to the global arena, global automotive sector. They can look at it, what they are doing, technologies, what's available elsewhere. They can get exposed to it. But when they bring back those technology ideas, there will be a much better competency building happening in a recently shorter time. It's not new, and many OEMs are doing it, many tier ones are doing it, but it has to become more inclusive now. We cannot look at outside somebody is going to give me the competency. It's that how can we develop and acquire our own competency with a given set of resources. We cannot say I need everything to be coming in from training, right? So that's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Brilliant. I mean, that was very, very comprehensive with respect to skill and competence development. Thank you so much, Meenakshi. Yeah. Your thoughts on electrification in the load carrier segment, Meenakshi, and also any initiatives from your group level in this regard?
Right. See, electrification on a load carrier segment is very much possible and practical. And I think the total cost of operation also suggests that we can move in that direction. The only the improvement which we need to do is the battery. Okay, we are doing right now a cell level imports, and then we are making our own packs. OEMs have started doing that. In view of performance levels, what we have seen in our group in doing a lot of simulations, the performance levels can be improved from an EV perspective if you are comparing it with the equivalent or apple-to-apple comparison with an IC engine, for sure. Because of the torque characteristics of the motors, it is very easy to meet the performance expectations. Having said that, we need to do a right gearbox selection. Yeah, for example, if I have to say EV, a load carrier EV, the important points are, number one is the motor selection. The motor torque has to be apt so that the gradient conditions are taken very clearly in a traction. And number two is the single reduction gearbox, which is very important to keep the efficiency of the motor as well as the final drive ratio in tandem with that. And third one is when these two are working together, then for sure the battery capacity required is minimized. So when we do so, we will be able to keep an EV much closer competition to the IC engine, or much closer existent to the IC engine. I don't want to use the word competition. Much closer existence, so that for the same given vehicle model, the customer has a choice between IC engine and EV with a little bit of price parity. So we can do that. In view of technology challenges, as I said, one is the kilometer per kilowatt hour what we can get should be maximized. At the same time, we must get into thinking of thermal management and lightweighting. So EV should be thought day one, lightweighting, right? And cost is anyway from day zero, right? But the lightweighting and the thermal management should be concentrated in a CV segment, or a LCV or a SCV segment, to move forward with EV thought process. And from our group perspective, we have put together an advanced engineering team, which is working on the technologies required to address the EV growth in the country. And it is not going to be overnight. As you know, the competency has to be built, and then solutions have to be provided. It's very clear that the OEMs are not expecting components. They have better components than what we can provide. They are looking at system solution. So that means all the component manufacturers have to move up in the value chain from a component supplier to a system solution provider. So from our group, we are doing that. As I said, math-based approach or a physics-based approach. We are working on a small E-drive with a gearbox to it. And for sure, a controller strategy need to be decided, whether it's going to be a controller from a customer or we need to do. So there are areas which need to be filled in the coming months or years, I would say. And in view of manufacturing, what is very much important, one is putting together a system from engineering perspective. A system solution can be very well done, but the manufacturing of the gearbox can be done. We have enough knowledge, we have enough technologies within our group. We have a good amount of technologies to manufacture aluminum die-cast components, or we have good amount of technologies to manufacture world-class gears, which we currently export to the US. So we can put together those and make a very low friction, lightweight gearbox, single reduction, to suffice to this industry. And with a range, what we are expecting is a kind of 120 kilometer to 160 kilometer based on the affordability of the customer and a battery pack. The motor and gearbox can be to the efficiency level of 94%, we can say, but then we need to bring up some battery pack to help the range and the range anxiety. So the tougher challenge will be on the battery, but the easier will be, comparatively easy will be the gearbox and the motor. And for sure, the ECU or the MCU, motor control unit, should be possible to make with a collaboration with the OE, like who would want to do the calibration, who would want to put the hardware, and who would want to be owning the software. It's much less complicated than the IC engine software perspective.
Brilliant. I mean, good to note the progress, and also Amalgamation's component divisions, preparedness and readiness for the same. And we hope to see some solutions, getting commercially implemented in the near future as well. Right.
Thank you.
Your thoughts on alternate fuel technologies, like CNG is something that's popular in our country. And also you mentioned about hybridization while answering one of the earlier questions. Being a hybridization being a possible solution in the CV space. Can you add some more detailing to the same on what level of hybridization and what the industry should do for the same?
Yeah. Number one, the alternate fuels, I primarily think about CNG, and I see the scrappage policy, if that comes in, will give a lot of engines which are ready to be converted to CNG, which is the easiest option available, one of the easiest option available. And we have experience in CNG in doing component engineering or working with the OEMs to do system level reliability. It's very easy. So the CNG would take the first step, and for sure there are bi-fuel thought process available, but this is the easiest front step available for all of us. And I can give some examples of Westport in the US and Canada. They used to do all conversion of Super 8 trucks of Ford. And the similar way we can also do and extend our engine life, extend our powertrain life for another 6-7 years. But maybe the vehicle needs to be rebuilt, or we could use the same vehicle based on the fitness available. So that's on the alternate fuels. But hybridization, what I think, if we bring in idle start stop technology for a truck, okay, the BSG systems, for example, belt starter generator system, required is going to be a little bigger, but it's going to be a one-time investment. And the start stop system, which could be looked at P0, P1, or P2 hybrids based on the OEM's choice. But I think P0 or P1 will be the easiest option available. Or if someone thinks about P2, which means it's off axis, we call it as, that means a motor is sitting parallel to the engine and you are driving with a belt system or a chain system, whichever you would like to do. So this kind of thought process will take us a fuel savings of certainly 3 to 4% minimum to a well-defined mild hybrid system can give a little more than that. Thank you.
Right. Interesting as well. Again, when we are talking about technology, probably a few concluding remarks from your side on what is our component industry's contribution, to the development of the entire commercial vehicle space. If you can share your thoughts on the same, Meenakshi.
Thank you, Bala. What I primarily see is the component industry is working very, very closely with the OEMs, and we have scaled up to the expectation of the OEMs. That's clearly proven in view of reliability improvement of our products. The overhauling or the reboring of the engines have gone away, or it's become kind of insignificant today. That are all the contributions coming from a component industry, whether it's a piston assembly or whether it is to do with the bearings. So the life of the components. Not only that, we could also mention the filter changeover intervals have increased, the oil refilling or the oil changeover intervals have increased. So every component industry has put their best to the commercial vehicle segment or overall to the automotive segment. And in view of particular to commercial vehicle, in spite of the medium volumes and the fluctuation in volumes, the engineering and the operations and the tier 1 companies have done well by keeping the cost under control. So that is second contribution we can say. And we are currently at a 57 billion USD of contribution from ACMA with a 15 billion exports and 10 billion of aftermarket revenues. But if you look at 2025 as per the automotive mission plan, we should be at a 200 billion and a 70 billion of exports and 32 billion of aftermarket sales. So this will put us in a very strong position, not only as a auto component industry, but also the Indian automotive industry. We would be in a much bigger scale, and we will be a volume player. When we reach that stage, we will be volume player. So the component industry has to work as a next step to improve the volumes from a 500,000 standpoint to a million standpoint. But when we are looking at self-reliant, a lot of people coming back to India for looking at manufacturing, and they want to shift towards EV, and they are bringing up all the IC engines to India and moving from one country to another country for manufacturing, looking for excellence or for their nearshore shipping. This all of them put us, auto component industry, look for higher volume manufacturing, which means higher capex in view of the pandemics as well as the current volume fluctuations in BS6 and CAFE 2. We have to get ready for another one to invest more, to churn out more parts in order to address the global OE, right? And in view of engineering approach, I must say, in view of engineering approach, the auto component industry contribution is applications engineering. Now, 10, 12 years before, if you look at that, and every meeting you will have people coming from Germany or US attending it. But today you can walk into an OEM and see that the meetings are happening between the Indian engineers. That means the simulation happens in India, the solution happens in India. Probably the technology today is coming from overseas, but it's not very far away that we have our own technologies to address our place. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, those are very, very encouraging views. I think to conclude, Mr. Meenakshi, India as a market over the last probably decade and plus, we've really, really improved our in-house technology capability. And as you indicated right through your interview, I think collaboratively, if we can work on focusing on sustaining our own technology, being self-reliant, I think we will definitely become one of the most important technology hubs globally, in the coming years, as far as the automotive industry is concerned. So,
Sure. Thank you very much, Bala. To
yeah,
you,
thank you so much, Meenakshi. Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you, and listening to a lot of disruptive ideas as well. And we wish you all the best. Thank you again for your time, Meenakshi. Yeah.
Thank you, and Motor India team and the viewers. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Our pleasure.
Thank you.